push that daydream up the mountain slow. Gonna build a daydream, gonna see it through. Gonna build a mountain and a daydream, gonna make them both come true. Gonna build a heaven from a little hell. Gonna build a heaven, and I know darn well, if I build my mountain with a lot of care and take my dream up a mountain, heaven will be waiting there. When I build that.
Thank you, everyone, and welcome. Thanks for being here this morning. It is truly an honor to stand before you for my first time as the person to give the message. Past times have been, me standing in front of you as a platform chair, so we're going to try something new today. My talk will center around the 12 powers. I wanted to take what Reverend Brenda had spoken about in this early spring and tie it into basically how it's empowered me. How do I see myself using and being supported through the 12 powers? As a dad to my boy-girl twins, Ethan and Allison. And as I was writing this talk, I realized that I was Unity before I even knew it. My wife and kids and I, we've been members here at Unity for 5 years. It seems like 5 minutes, but it's been 5 years. And as my children are about to celebrate their 9th birthday next month, I realized that a lot of what I was trying to kind of grasp onto with divine order and divine wisdom was right here. And so as I've become a member of Unity, I've realized that now my attempts, my actions have titles, have names to them. And so I wanted to share that with you. All right, but before we begin, some ground rules. First, and this was brought up earlier in the service here a couple of times, defining fatherhood. When I hop out of the van with Ethan and Allie and they scurry over to the park or wherever we happen to be, there's not much culturally or socially that has to happen for people to look at me, especially if they see my son, and go, I bet he's the dad. I don't know if it's the dark socks and the sandals. I don't know if it's the minivan. That one kid sure looks like him. But they don't really kind of look and say, I wonder if he's the second cousin. They don't delve that deep. And so I exist in this fatherhood realm in a very narrow band, but what I would invite each of you to do is to ponder what fatherhood means for you. How would you define it? What qualities and characteristics does it have for you? For example, does a father figure have a mentoring quality to it? Does a father figure necessarily have to be masculine? Does a father figure have to be one that is activity oriented? I'm not preaching to you as if I've got the answers. I'm going to share what I am. But nonetheless, as you take what I say, I invite you to have your own lenses that you try on, in those times in your lives in which you've been a father or in a fathering role, or somebody has served that for you. And that way, hopefully through what I say and how I've applied it, you can start to see, all right, well, where's my truth? Where's the core of this for me? So that's rule number 1. Rule number 2, I will be speaking from my perspective as a dad, of course, but the undercurrent, the subtle kind of hum in the background that I know and that I want you to know is that I'm the lucky one. I'm going to try and get through this part. This is the tough one. That's why I put it in the beginning. I get to co-parent with my wife, Lisa, and that right there explains everything for me. Because I got to have this journey with her as a parent, I'm the richer for it. I take over, in my mind, just to rely on the terms, the dad side of things. But I am truly grateful and blessed to parent with Lisa. And anything that I can see in me as something that I feel is successful, I also have to give part of that credit, if not all of that, to my wife. So, thank you. And when you think about it musically, which I do, I don't know if that's kind of the norm. I mean, I think Jim and I have that in common. But as people are wont to do, I look at what I do as kind of that counterpoint, that harmony. You know, I see what Lisa lays down in her role as mom, and I see what I can do to add in and to fill the gaps and to complement and to flesh out. So we're going to get into that a little bit more. And then the last ground rule for today's talk. I am going to lay down before you the expert shield. I don't carry that. I make mistakes every day. I don't have this figured out in the least as a dad. All I can tell you is that any moment of hubris I might feel as a dad usually gets turned on me really fast and involves usually grape juice stains, you know. So the moment I think, I've got this, it's all right, the universe will teach me through my own children that there's a few more things to learn. So I'm going to share with you the 12 powers and how they've applied to my role as a parent, but none of it is written or said to you from an authoritarian or an expert angle. Just as people have joked around with me before with the way my voice is, I may sound authoritarian, you know, it's just that register, but trust me, I'm still on my learning curve. All right. Are we all buckled in? Are we ready to do this? Excellent. All right. The first power, faith. As you'll hear throughout this talk, and as you know, the 12 powers, I'm going to talk about them in isolation, but they work hand in hand. There's a lot of overlap. And there's some that have had a greater impact on me than others, but at all times, they're there. And they're there working in concert. So I'm going to bring to the forefront here faith. And faith is the bedrock. So quick story here. We went, my wife and I, that fateful day in July, almost 9 years ago, to what we thought was going to be an ultrasound that would then turn into a series of ultrasounds. You know, she was pregnant with twins, and we felt like, okay, you know, we're going to now be having ultrasounds every week. And sure enough, we go to this first ultrasound that would then be kind of like the last, like, normal one, and then we were going to have these succession of ultrasounds over there, and we learned very quickly that baby A, or baby B, but one baby was half the size of the other baby. And you didn't need to be an ultrasound technician to realize that something was afoot. And the ultrasound technician and the wonderful professionals, medical professionals, you know, obviously took care of us and let us know that there was something that they needed to find out about the twins. And lo and behold, you know, several hours later, my wife has brought Ethan and Allie into the world via emergency C-section. So I'm going to go through kind of the beginning of this very quickly. Each of the points that I bring up can be its own talk. But Ethan and Allie were born 8 weeks premature. And as any NICU nurse and doctor will tell you, the stronger sex is the female sex. So right off the bat, they said, if you have any questions about gender, you know, and who's the stronger sex, and if you, you know, have that still floating around your brain, let me just rest assured, it's girls. Girls will win all the time. And sure enough, Allison, born at 4 pounds, she just had to get a control of her breathing and gain an extra pound to get to that magic 5-pound weight, and in 4 weeks she came home. Ethan, born at 2 pounds, had a little bit of a longer journey. He was in the NICU, both here in Cedar Rapids and then at the University of Iowa, for 6 months, as he was dealing with his issues and gaining the strength and the weight that he needed. And then again, this whole story can itself be its own 2-hour talk, but nonetheless, I'm a new dad in a NICU with 2 little ones, Ethan and Allie, and I needed faith, and faith came to me. The blessing in all of this was that the NICU turned out to be kind of, for me, the boot camp for parenting. I realized I was way in over my head. I realized very quickly that I needed help and that I would take any advice that would be given to me. And so any doctor, any nurse that wanted to show me the right way to change a diaper, hold a baby, learn feeding, I was signing up. I just dropped my ego and I said, I am a blank slate, teach me. And they did. And I soaked it in as much as I humanly could. And all the while, I just relied on faith that we're going to get through the day, we're going to get to the next day. And some days are going to be better than others, but we're going to keep putting one foot in front of the other. And I created little finish lines for myself. You know, when the world got too big, which it often did, I would look down and say, okay, right now I'm just cleaning all of the breathing equipment here for my son, and I'm going to forget about everything, and I'm just going to focus on this task, and I'm going to do it the best that I can. And I have faith that the next task I'll be able to tackle, the next one, but I'm just creating these little finish lines to cross. And that goes back to an earlier life I had where I was a runner, and I loved running as therapy and as exercise, and my goal in life was to run every USATF distance. And I did. But in that process and in that journey, I learned the mental ability to just block out the larger picture for the very small picture, if that's all that my brain could handle. And then as I could handle a little bit more, the camera lens would get a little bit wider, and I could take this in. So faith was that bedrock where I could go and just breathe and understand that I don't have the answers now. I don't need to, but it'll come. It'll all work out. And so that's where I wanted to begin with that power, and I'll come back to that. Strength is closely tied to that. And for me, just like I said before, I could have each of these be their own separate talk, but strength for me goes down to this one little trick that I did, and I wish I could give credit to the person who taught this to me or where I heard it. I'm a researcher by nature, I'm a learner by nature, and so anything, especially about parenting that I felt like I needed to know, I would be, headlong into websites and books and stuff. And so somewhere along the path, I realized, or I got this bit of advice, that if your wife is moving, so are you. Your goal is to match movement. If she is doing the dishes, you are doing something else, And the minute she sits, you sit. She gets back up, you get back up. And you just keep going. And that imbued in me strength. And it also is how that 12th power, one of the 12 powers, came through me in the fact that if I can be shoulder to shoulder with her and I could be taking on some of those tasks and I could be matching her movement, then we're good. The tell was for me whenever she would look at me and say, why are you doing that? I need you to do this. Great, no problem. I did not mean to dig the underground, irrigation system. I'll do that tomorrow. That's okay. I will do whatever you wanted me to do. And so we had that. So that was what strength for me was and how it came out in my parenting. Parenting is the toughest thing that I've ever done, but I've always realized that if I was doing the right work as a parent, I didn't have to worry about strength. If I felt just utterly exhausted, but I was doing what I felt I needed to do for my children, strength was always going to be there. I was always going to make it. I may feel like sleeping for 3 days afterwards, but the right work allowed that power to come through. And that, again, is a theme that you'll see recurring. The next power is wisdom. And again, wisdom is something that we could spend years talking about. And I wish I could give credit to where I learned this. But my first act of wisdom to my children was to speak to them in a regular voice. If I was reading stories to them or we were joking around, yeah, you can make little cartoon voices and all that. But if I'm talking with them, then that little kernel of wisdom would pop up and just say, speak in your normal voice. And that's what they've always known. And so when I speak in my normal voice, they understand, okay, this is Dad. I know Dad. And when he flips into weird voices because we're playing around or he's reading a book, I get that too. I can make that connection. So my first kind of act of wisdom, and I wish I could give credit, I'm going to give credit to divine order. Divine wisdom is just to speak in a normal voice. And this also helped with mantras, which I'll also share with you in a little bit. The other two bits of wisdom happened literally in moments of exhaustion, when I felt like I just couldn't go any further with whatever I was doing as a dad at the moment. One of those times was the kids, when they were toddlers, they did not, like I would imagine most kids, want to go to get ready for bed right at that exact moment. They were just too busy playing. And so they started to fuss, and they started to kind of push back a little bit. And I said, wait. I didn't say anything about going to bed. I said, I'm going to beat you up these stairs. Do you understand? I was a runner before you were born. I'm quick. I'm a gifted athlete. And at that moment, the kids stopped the fussing, and they're like, we're going to beat Dad. So in that moment where I was like, I'm about ready to just lose it here, I said, nope, we're going to line up at this point in the kitchen. We're going to race upstairs, and I want to see who's fastest. I know it's going to be me. And then they took that as a challenge, and we got upstairs. And then it was like the Etch-a-Sketch. We just wiped the slate clean, and they're like, okay, let's get ready for bed. So that was another bit of wisdom. And then the last one happened when I was getting a little bit too micromanagey. Again, this happened most in the toddler years, where I was correcting them, 50 times a second, and I was realizing no one can follow that many redirections, in that short of time. So I remember I was brushing Ethan's teeth. And he was like 2.5, 3 years old, and he was, of course, wiggly and really kind of making it a bit challenging. And I had just gone through a long day of high school teaching with toddlers who were just a little bit taller. And I couldn't get them to use commas right, but by gosh, I'm going to get this kid's teeth clean, So it's at that point where you kind of realize the tension's building. And so then I just started micromanaging all the little things. So I told Ethan, I said, okay, don't blink with your left eye, quit moving your pinky toe. And then all of a sudden he started to understand, oh my gosh, Dad's telling me silly things to do. And then his body relaxed, and he smiled, opened his mouth, we got the teeth brushed. And so wisdom comes not so much in the parting of the clouds like a Monty Python cartoon and a giant head and light, but it's in these moments in which I don't have any other card left to play. So let's see if we can make it a race. Let's see if we can just go completely overboard and see if the kids get the exaggeration, and they do. Kids are exaggeration magnets. So that was wisdom. Love, oh man, you want to talk about, trying to put 10 pounds of salt in a 5-pound bag with this talk. Love is, just like faith for me, the part of the bedrock, the foundation, the platform that I always try to work from. And the key word for me as a dad is to make love selfless. If there is an agenda, then I need to check that agenda. Why am I wanting my kids to do this? What am I hoping for them? Is this their journey or my journey? So for me, it's not so much to give examples for you about love, but more in this sense of what is the kind of the check that I'm doing things in alignment with my truth. So if there is an agenda, and I have an agenda, but I tell them that. It's like, for example, one of the things is I want them to learn piano. And the reason why I want them to learn piano is if they learn piano, then that is basically the gateway to all the rest of the instruments. I just want them to have a sense of where the high notes are, the low notes are, and how chords and things like that work, and then they can go in any direction they want. I don't want them necessarily to be concert pianists, but I'm not going to turn that down. But nonetheless, I tell them that. So, and there's no strings attached. I'm not telling them I'm going to not love you or love you less if you don't become, musically inclined. I just want to make that door open for you, and let's see what happens. So if there's an agenda, I always try my best to tell them that, okay, here's the reason why, I'm practicing, catch with you, or we're kicking a ball, or we're playing the piano. But then that everything else I'm doing is selfless. What is the main motivations behind that? How am I expressing love to my kids? Is it unconditional? And that is the lens I keep going back to. Power is another of the 12 powers that I wrestle with. You know, again, as I've said before, I was a high school teacher for 18 years. I'm now currently a literacy consultant, and so I have a very strong micromanaging streak in me. You know, I like things to be a certain way. But power, if used wrong, can devastate. And so for me as a father, it's not about having power over my kids, not any kind of dominion. But what I rely on power for, or what I use power kind of as the divining rod in my life, is to continually check, like I mentioned before, am I doing the right work? You know, am I using my faculty of power to empower them, to be independent, to be their own people, to show me what they can do, instead of me telling them the right way to do something all of the time. I saw this very clearly, and I'll always remember it, in some of Ethan's first OT and PT sessions, where this happened largely in the physical therapy sessions where we were helping him learn to walk. And the PT person just literally told me, said, your son can do more than you may think he can, and you may think that what I'm going to do to him is cruel, you know, but it's hard work. There's a difference. Hard work is not cruel. He is going to walk, and I'm going to help him do that. What I need you to do is be powerful and silent. And I realized in that moment, okay, I can do that. There's power in silence. There's power in presence. And there's power in letting somebody else have that faculty flow through them. And there were a couple of early times in those PT sessions in which I saw Ethan just put his head down. He was on his stomach, and he just put his forehead to the mat, and he was exhausted. And then I saw his little hands splay out his fingers, and then I saw his elbows go up, and I saw him push up one more time. And I don't care, you know, how many, you know, World's Strongest Man shows I end up watching at 2 a.m. or whatever. And I don't care how many times I might see somebody actually pull, you know, a boxcar down track. Seeing a 1.5, 2-year-old just be face down and then raise the elbows and splay the fingers out and go back at it one more time to learn how to walk. That to me was power. And I took that in silence. So there's that. Imagination. Oh boy. Like I said earlier in my talk, there's some of these powers that have been more present for me than possibly others. Some have been the bedrock and the foundation, some have been in the background, and some come right to the foreground in unique and weird ways, or, you know, weird to me. So imagination is all rooted in how my children have used their minds creatively today. You know, we do a lot of rote, routine tasks. I don't worry about life not teaching them, you know, that, or my wife or myself to do that for the kids. But what have they done that's been unique? You know, where have I seen that? And in myself as a dad, I've realized that my imagination, just from kind of, you know, being bored of the routine, comes out in you know, unique moments. One of them is the hand washing song. Those of you who have ever taken on the physical task of helping a small human wash their hands knows that on the second try, you're going to probably wear galoshes and a bib. But the first couple of times, you are just trying to do it right, and you're trying to make them hygienic, and you're trying to send them down the right path. You do that a couple of hundred times, which is basically, you know, the course of like maybe 3 days, and you realize, I don't think I'm ever going to leave the bathroom here. And those times in which I'm here myself, I want to be left alone, and that's never going to happen either. So what do? Well, I'm there washing my kids' hands, and I lined them up, and we washed the hands, and I scurried them off. And all of a sudden, one day, I was just humming a little tune, and I came up with a hand-washing song. Would you guys like to hear the hand-washing song? Okay. This is also the second tough part of my talk after the talking about Lisa in the first part, but here we go, and I have to actually visualize myself in the bathroom with my kids washing their hands. All right, here we go. Jim, I have all the respect in the world for you. I don't know how you do this. We're gonna wash our hands. We're gonna get them really clean. We're gonna scrub and scrub and scrub and scrub and to practice a good hygiene. We're gonna get in between the fingers where dirt likes to linger. We're gonna scrub and scrub and scrub and scrub and to practice a good hygiene. And to practice a good hygiene. Next kid. So sometimes when you're trying for your kids to exercise their ability for imagination and creativity, it comes out in you as well. So thanks for humoring me on that one. You definitely have zeal, and I appreciate it, and that's coming up next. So imagination, like I said earlier, was what have they done with their mind today that was out of the routine? You know, what could they do with perhaps toys or just, you know, the environment around them that shows creativity? And whenever I caught it, you know, with each of my kids, I made sure I was using the faculty of zeal to support that, because I didn't want them to be, you know, little cluster robots. And so that part will come back up here. Understanding, again, is a lot like faith and power and strength, in the fact that for me it's a bedrock power. Discipline is vital, but discipline means to teach. Assessment in the educational world means to sit beside. And so those two kind of fuel how I look at discipline, but all of it is with that understanding. All of it is with that frame of understanding. And so anytime, and I tried very hard, I'm not perfect at this, but any time in which I've needed to guide my kids into different behavior or to problem solve, or, you know, they had made a mistake, they had erred in some way, and I needed to correct that, the way I used the power of understanding was always to start whatever I was going to say to them with, I love you, and I need you to know. And that was the first two things, regardless of whatever happened. You know, maybe Allison went out on her scooter without a helmet. Allie, come here. I love you, but I need you to know. That concrete isn't going to give. Grab your helmet, you know. And then it's not punitive. It's, again, discipline. And it comes from that base of understanding, that acceptance for who they are, and to understand developmentally where they're at. You know, and that also can be a part of humor, but at the end of the day, in all seriousness, to look at where are they at in their ages, what can they do for themselves, what is theirs to do, and how can I help them with that. The next power is will, and this one is one that I don't so much imbue to them. It's not something that's directly taught, but it's something that I keep in mind. Will is the control of your purpose. And a lot of the times in parenting, you want to escape. You want to just like, oh gosh, do I have to? Or, you know, I haven't seen sports on TV for years. Can I just have like 20 minutes? You know, it's all of those times in which you find yourself mentally or even physically like, gosh, do I want to pick up the mantle again? And for me, the minute I know that my little monkey mind is escaping and trying to duck a responsibility, to duck the reality that's in front of me, will is what brings me back. And it comes through me in breath. And so I want to escape a million times a day. I want to go check Facebook. But what's best for the kids? You know, is my will serving me, or is it serving God? Is my duties as a parent serving them, or am I escaping too much? Now, we all need breaks. You know, don't get me wrong, we all need to recharge the batteries, but there's times to do that, and there's mindful ways to do that. But for me, will is that kind of barometer internally for me, that power to understand that maybe now's not the time, to give that little pause and to say, yep, it's a big task, I know you're scared, still got to do it. Get back in the arena. You don't have to do it right, you just have to show up, be present, and give your best shot. And that's the little pep talk that I end up giving myself. Order is, this is me through and through. Stability breeds order, order breeds calmness, and then we can get something done. So for me, everything has a home. I don't like clutter, but I don't want it in the physical sense because I know it'll come through in the mental sense. And so for the kids, it's not about like cleaning up their rooms, but more about that they know that I'm going to be the same dad on Monday as I am going to be on Tuesday, that if they want to know where something is, we can find it. It has a home. They have a home. And that there's going to be this calm routine. That's the goal. That's what I've wanted for them. And so that's what I keep going back to more and more. Zeal comes through in just having fun. I was bike riding with the kids, and they started to act out Star Wars, and so what am I going to do? I have 2 master's degrees. I've, swum with sea turtles in Anama Bay. I've traveled through Europe. I'm going to make Star Wars noises. Zeal tells you, just drop everything, sound like a TIE fighter. Your kids will thank you for it. And then the last 2, elimination and life. Elimination is something that I've often struggled with, but I know that it's very, very valuable. And for me, it comes through in the letting go and understanding that everyone's life has chapters and that those chapters will open and close in their right time, and that I may witness those openings and closings, but I can't dictate it. And for me, it comes through in 2 ways. One, Ethan loves trains, and he grew up with Thomas the Train, but now he actually really is into actual trains, and we go on train trips to go watch the trains go by. There's going to come a point in which he may stop that. He may not want to do train trips with Dad anymore, and I'm currently working when that moment will happen. Not sure, but I know it'll happen at some point. And for me, activating the power of elimination and letting go will help fuel that. With Allie, it's happened. Her chapters are very short. So I've had more practice with her, but one of them was when she would cry in the night, and I would go and comfort her. And as a quick little aside, a friend of mine said, because he had his first child, he said, "Chris, how do you determine whose turn it is to go and get the crying baby in the night?" And I looked at him and I said, "Well, with twins it's a little different. It's not, do you want to go? It's, who do you want? And then you make that decision." So on my nights in which I got Allie, I would hold her and I would tell her the night-night speech. And I was telling her, A, to tell her, but B, also to kind of keep myself awake. And part of that little mantra that I said to her was the fact that I loved holding her and that she's safe and that I know there's going to come a time not too far in the future in which I won't be able to hold her anymore and she won't need the night-night speech. But right now, as tired as we both are, we've got it. We're here. And so now I'm going to enjoy this chapter. And sure enough, she grew out of that, but I had those moments, and elimination let me know that it's okay to let go. I'll have the memory, but the letting go allows for the last power to happen, which is life. Life is beautiful. You get to re-experience your own childhood in a lot of ways with your kids, from jumping bikes off of curbs to, setting up Hot Wheels tracks, and these are all those little beautiful moments that I know are a blessing and a gift to myself, and they are expressions of life. In the NICU, my children chose life. That is the truth that I know. But I also know, as a dad, by choosing my children and fully participating the best that I can be as a parent, so do I. So, thank you very much. And let's take this into meditation. All right. I invite everybody to be comfortable in their chairs, to take 3 full, relaxing breaths, to become fully present. Scan your body and notice where there may be any tightness, any soreness, and calmly release it from your forehead to your shoulders, to your hands, down into your legs and ankles. Let any spot of tension be released with your breath. And let's focus our minds on those times we may have served in a fatherhood role, however big or small. What of the 12 powers activated us? Where is your truth? You may find yourself thinking of those who have served as a dad to you. What qualities do they possess? How do the 12 powers show up for them, to you? With another breath, let's bring up that well of gratitude for those moments where we were given to and that we were able to give. And with this, we say amen.